All right, so as we get rolling here with section 9.5, it's important to point out that this is really the meat and potatoes of this chapter, where we get into this idea of factoring. And again, I've said it over and over again in class, but I want to reiterate it in these videos. These ideas are ideas that you're going to see again and again throughout the course of not only high school but even into college math. So this factoring stuff is extremely important if you want to be successful in higher level math. So my hope is that you'll take some serious time to put in the amount of effort necessary for you to learn the material. So we're going to continue factoring, but today we're going to look at factoring trinomials instead of factoring out just greatest common factor. We're going to factor trinomials in the form of x squared plus bx plus c. Okay, and so really you're going to be asking yourself this question over and over again. I need two numbers whose product is 24 and whose sum is 11. So the way I would suggest doing this to start is you want to look at 24 and I want you to list all of the factors of 24. Okay, in other words, what numbers multiply to get you positive 24? Well, you have 1 and 24, you have 2 and 12, you have 3 and 8, and you have 4 and 6. Okay? And then you ask yourself, out of all of those, which ones add up to 11? Okay, well, 24 plus 1 is obviously 25. Not that one. 2 plus 12 is 14. That's not 11. 8 plus 3, 11. Check. Okay, so the two numbers I'm looking for, the two numbers that multiply to get 24 but add to get 11, are 8 and 3. Okay, same thing in part B. Okay, it says product is 30, sum is negative 11. Okay, now this is a little bit more complicated because when you go through here now, you're going to realize you have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, let's see here, 5 and 6. Okay, well, if all of the positives work, okay, then all of the negatives will work as well. So in other words, you also have negative 1 and negative 30. You get the idea. Negative 2, negative 15, negative 3, negative 10, negative 5, negative 6. And you'll see if you don't recognize that, then you wouldn't be able to do this problem. Okay, so you have to recognize when you have all the positives, you can also take all the negatives. Okay, so two numbers who multiply to 30 and add to negative 11. Well, if I add these two numbers, negative 1 plus negative 30 is negative 31. Nope. Negative 2 plus negative 15 is negative 17. Nope. Negative 3 plus negative 10, negative 13. Nope. And obviously, hopefully this last one works. Negative 5 plus negative 6 is negative 11. Okay, and so the two numbers I'd be looking for here are negative 5 and negative 6. Okay, you'll notice when your product is positive and your sum is negative, then both of your numbers will be negative. Okay, so again, I'll say that again. If your product is positive and your sum is negative, then both numbers are going to be negative. Okay. Now here you'll notice I have a negative product and a negative sum, so that what that means is this. Well, when I list the product, if I want the product of negative 20, so I have negative 20, there are only certain ways to multiply to get negative 20. Okay, you have 1 and negative 20, and you have negative 1 and positive 20. Okay, and then you have negative 2 and 10, and then you have 2 and negative 10. All right, and we keep plugging away through here. I get 4 and negative 5, and negative 4 and positive 5. And those are all the values that will multiply to get me negative 20. So then I start plugging away, and again, my sum is negative 8. Add these two. Negative 19, no good. Add these two. Positive 19, no good. Negative 2 plus 10, positive 8, no good. 2 plus negative 10, negative 8. Check. Those are the two numbers I'm looking for, 2 and negative 10. Okay? And again, you can memorize these patterns where if they're both negative, well then one's positive, one's negative. Not completely necessary. Okay? And then finally, the product is negative 30, sum is 1, so you have negative 30. And again, you're going to get to a point where I'm not going to expect you to list all these factors. I'm just simply doing this as an introduction. Okay, so the product is negative 30, so 1 and negative 30, negative 1, positive 30. And then I have negative 2 and 15, and 2 and negative 15. And then I have negative 3 and positive 10, and 3 and negative 10. Let's see here, 4, 5, so I have negative 5, positive 6, and positive 5, negative 6. Go through, sum is 1. Not going to work, okay? And really, I think it's pretty obvious. If your sum is going to be 1, then that means that your two numbers have to be 1 unit away from each other. And the only option is going to be one of these two, okay? Since 6 and 5 are 1 away from each other. So the question is, I need a sum of positive 1. Negative 5 plus positive 6, there's your positive 1, okay? So the two numbers, negative 5, positive 6. And the reason we did that, well, you'll see here in a second, is because we're going to be asking ourselves these questions as we go through and factor. Okay, so when I factor x squared plus 7x plus 10, the first thing you're asking yourself is, I need my product to be 10, and I need my sum to be 7. Okay, so it's always this guy is your product, this guy is your sum. There we go. All right, so again, without going into too much detail here, I need two numbers that multiply to positive 10 and add to positive 7. If you have to, write out all the factors. 1, 10, 2, and 5. That's it. Okay, 1 and 10 obviously don't add up to, but 2 and 5 add up to 7. So 2 and 5 are the two numbers. And so when I factor this, what I do with those 2 and 5s is pretty simple. I do this. I go x. All right, I'm not sure. There we go. X plus 2, parentheses. I'm not sure why this smartboard. There we go. And then x plus 5 equals 0. Actually, not even equals 0. They're just asking us to factor. They don't give us an equation. So that's all you do. You find your factors, and then you rewrite it. All right. As two binomials. Part B, and again, all of these, there's plenty of examples here to look at. I'll buzz through the first 3 or 4, and then you're going to be expected to do the last 3 or 4 on your own before you come to class tomorrow. So again, product is 7, sum is positive 8. Not really sure why my marker's not working here. There we go. Okay, so product is 7. So on the side you're thinking 1 and 7, and there's no other way to multiply to get 7, so that makes our life easy. Those are the two numbers. 1 plus 7 is 8, 7 times 1 is 7, and so when I factor this, I just take those two numbers and I rewrite it like this. Okay, and that would be the factored form. You could double check yourself because you can go back through mentally and FOIL this back out and make sure when you FOIL it, you end up right back where you started, and in that case you will. All right, and then third example here, again, product is positive 6, sum is negative 7. This is probably one where you're going to want to write them all out. Remember, if your product is positive and your sum is negative, then both numbers have to be negative. So you have negative 1, negative 6, negative 2, negative 3. Those are the only two options. Okay, and so as I go through and I look, I say, all right, when I add these two, I get negative 7. When I add these two, I get negative 5. Well, which sum am I looking for? We already said here, I'm looking for negative 7. All right, so these are the two numbers I'm working, negative 1 and negative 6. So when I do this, I have m plus negative 1, m plus negative 6, and really, we could have skipped that step and just gone straight to m minus 1, m minus 6. Okay, and that would be the factored form there of this particular trinomial. All right. And again, we're plugging away here. I'm going to let you guys, I'll do D here, and then I'm going to let you guys work through the rest. So again, product, positive 4, sum, negative 4. Product's positive, sum's negative, got to be two negative numbers. So it's either negative 1 and negative 4, or negative 2 and negative 2. So you ask yourself which one of these two sets of numbers adds up to negative 4. Hopefully it's fairly obvious that it's negative 2 and negative 2. And so what you end up with is a minus 2, a minus 2, and since those two things are the same, really we can combine this and say that's just a minus 2 quantity squared. Okay, and that would be the simplest form right there of this factored trinomial. All right, so again, we're going to spend a lot of time factoring trinomials. Hopefully this is starting to make a little bit of sense to you. All right, it says find the zeros, and as a matter of fact, I don't see these on your notes. So what we'll do is I'm going to skip through that. Here we go. Example 3. One thing to note is when it does say find the zeros, all that means is solve the equation. Set it equal to zeros is all you have to do there. Okay, but I'm not going to work through them since they're not on your notes. But so this one says solve the equation. So in other words, find the zeros. Well, first thing you have to do is pull everything to one side. So minus 10, minus 10. And so I end up with x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. And now from here, you got to go back and do what we were just doing. We got to factor this thing. Okay, so again, product, negative 10, sum is positive 3. Okay, so I have, if it's negative 10, I have negative 1, 10, 1, negative 10, negative 2, 5, 2, negative 5, and that's it. Okay, so I ask myself which one of those adds up to positive 3. Negative 2 plus 5 is 3. And so I end up, when I factor this, I end up with x minus 2, x plus 5 equals 0. And now we're back to the zero product property. If these two things multiply to get 0, then that means one of two things. Either x minus 2 is 0 or x plus 5 is 0. And when I solve those, add 2, so x is either 2 or x is negative 5. Either answer is going to work. Okay, and again, there's only one more there for you to work on, so I'm going to let you guys do part B on your own. And then finally, part C, or I'm sorry, the last example here, it says we got to find the length and width. So I'm going to set this up and I'm going to let you guys finish it. So hopefully we know it says area, and this thing's a rectangle. So A equals base times height. We know what capital A is. They told us. It's 30. We know what the base is. The base is the x plus 5, and the height is the x minus 8. All right, and so all you're going to do, go through and do here is you're going to go through and you actually have to solve for x. Okay, so this one you're going to have to work backwards a little bit because you're going to have to actually FOIL this out. Okay, so in other words, you're going to end up with 30 equals x squared minus 8x plus 5x minus 40. Okay, I'm going to bring this up here, and so what you end up with is 30 equals x squared minus 3x minus 40. You're going to subtract your 30 from both sides, and what you end up with is x squared minus 3x minus 70 equals 0, and then you ask yourself, I need two numbers that multiply to get negative 70 and add to get negative 3. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys kind of take a look at that and bring that answer to class tomorrow. Okay, so any questions you have on factoring, bring them to class tomorrow. I know this is a new idea, so you're probably, if your head's spinning a little bit, don't get overwhelmed. We'll take plenty of time in class to answer any questions you have.